You don't need 15 milligrams. And for God's sake, you don't need 20 milligrams ever in your life. If you take more than 10 milligrams, you are I'm
Me and
supposed to
Leo
be.
can talk about how to make Adderall more effective while you're
Yeah,
gone.
go for it. Yeah, I'll be gone. My
Let's do
apologies,
that.
guys.
So number one, Derek, number one, I want to mention to the audience that I'm not some kind of amphetamine freak or something like that. Although I look like one, I understand that I act like one and stuff like that, but I'm actually not. How I got introduced to this really quickly, I'm not gifted at all. I'm not intelligent. I'm really average in every kind of way, and I didn't have many advantages in life. Growing up without parents, mostly, trying to struggle to do well in school. Got into a school shouldn't have gotten into, Carnegie Mellon. Failed the first year, screwed up, all that kind of stuff. And my father at the time, my father alcoholic, was depending on me, didn't have a job, needed help, and I really wanted to work hard, make money, and get a job, and so I was really trying to do my best. And I had been diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger because my mom's American, so I got diagnosed. So I said, you know what? I didn't think I had ADHD. I knew I couldn't focus well. I couldn't focus. I mean, I would read something, not pay attention, but it's because I'm stupid. It's not because anything else. That's what I thought at the time. That's what I thought. So I went to a doctor and I said, hey, I have ADHD. I've been diagnosed before. They tested me. They gave me 15 milligrams of Adderall, and they told me to take it every single day. And I did that, but I also changed my entire life, and I did an incredible thing. And in 2 years, I completely transformed my brain, my function, everything. I went from a failing student to a 4.0 student. I became the first in the history of the undergraduate curriculum of Carnegie Mellon to be recommended to be a TA of the mathematical optimization course. I've mentioned this in an interview with Arthur Benjamin, the mathematician, on my channel before. I accomplished great things, and I was failing algebra in high school, didn't know anything. And I all did that because of amphetamines. Now, later on, I discovered that a lot of things that this doctor told me were wrong. The dose I used was way too high. I should have taken days off. There were a lot of mistakes. And along the way, later on in life, as you can tell from my story, had many experiences, and later on developed depression, anxiety, many neurological problems. And I had to learn about the nervous system. And along the way, I hadn't been using amphetamines for years and years, but along the way, I learned some ways to optimize it, some ways to make it a little bit more effective. So I want to talk to you guys very briefly today about that. I'm not going to tell you too many things because this is something I spend basically all my time reading about. But I'm going to give you some quick tips. Okay. Number one, higher doses are not better. What happens is this: at higher doses, our body has two nervous systems. One is called the parasympathetic, one is called the sympathetic. The sympathetic sounds like it's friendly to you, but it's not. That's the fight or flight one. That's the angry one. So
Yeah.
what happens is this: when you take higher doses of amphetamines do two things, unlike cocaine. Cocaine only does one thing. In your brain, you have two neurons. These neurons communicate a hormone between each other. Cocaine tells the hormone that's communicating dopamine not to let that hormone back out of the extracellular space, basically. So you feel more of that hormone. Amphetamines don't just do that. They do that, but they also cause more of a release of dopamine. So they do two things. And they're more powerful because of that reason. Now, what's a drug like cocaine? Bupropion, Wellbutrin. It's a common antidepressant. Now, Wellbutrin actually, at the actual drug, by the way, and I know the pro drug in this case, bupropion, unlike the drug we were talking about last time, it is actually a pro drug. The drug that's mainly used in the body actually affects norepinephrine, which is noradrenaline, that really sympathetic driving thing. It's cortisol and adrenaline that drive that sympathetic nervous drive, that trend feeling. So bupropion, the actual drug that's in your body, affects more noradrenaline, but the actual bupropion drug is a dopamine reuptake inhibitor similar to cocaine. Now, amphetamine is great because it's very dopaminergic. It's one of the most dopaminergic drugs. The first lesson I'll teach you is this: amphetamine has two isomer forms. They're like a chemist came on my show recently, described it very well. They're like two hands. Your hands are the same, but they're not quite the same. They're symmetric opposites. One is called the dextro rotation of amphetamine, dextroamphetamine, also called dexedrine. One is called the levoamphetamine. So levoamphetamine, Adderall is about 25% levoamphetamine, 75% dextroamphetamine. That's why it's a branded product. That's why brand name Adderall works better than generic Adderall. What is generic Adderall? Amphetamine salts, equal amounts of both of them. Why do you want more of dextroamphetamine? It has more dopaminergic effect, less adrenaline effect. Now, if you're somebody who has weird, not weird, if you have melancholic depression, which means that you don't When I get depressed, I get anxious. Some people get depressed, they just lay in bed, they don't have energy. For those people, noradrenaline is great. They don't mind. They want the level of amphetamine. They want to be up. Because, by the way, amphetamines used to be antidepressants. The only reason they stopped giving them to people is because people abuse them, just like opioids. They're actually excellent. I mean, I'm not recommending to people, they're effective antidepressants. Anyway, back to the point. First thing, dextroamphetamine. Second thing, you choose that because more dopaminergic effect, less sympathetic nervous drive, less raciness, less heartbeat, less stress on your body, less taxation in general, a little bit less. It's also slightly weaker because of that reason. You'll feel a little bit less of it. Second thing, you don't need 15 milligrams. And for God's sake, you don't need 20 milligrams ever in your life. If you take more than 10 milligrams, you are quickly downregulating your dopamine receptors. Dopamine is a neurotoxin. What does that mean? Dopamine is excitatory. Any hormone in the nervous system that's excitatory causes neurons to get so much energy that they may die. They may die either because of pro-inflammatory cytokines reacting to it or because of the stress of the excitation. So the neurons quickly downregulate dopamine receptors. That's why drug addicts have a very difficult time. One of the reasons, because they keep chasing that high. So to not chase the high, you have to do two things. Number one, you don't take the dose so high that your body's like, there's too much dopamine in my brain. I really need to downregulate. Number two, you need to take days off every week. Every week, you have to take at least 2 days off. My recommendation for anybody is 3 days off. You can't use it more than that and get it effectively. But if you only do it 4 days a week, you'll still get that great effect. If you guys don't have more comments, I'll go to the next one.
So every other day administration, basically.
I do 4. I don't actually take it all the time, but if I did, I would do 4 days a week and then take 3 days off.
How does it compare to modafinil? Because I've never really had access to Adderall.
Far superior. But the reason is this. So modafinil is excellent at the wakefulness feeling, just being alive. Dopamine, why I say it's far superior, why it allows people to do what I did is this. What I used it for was not to focus. It was to trick myself to enjoy reading. I'm a person that didn't like to read. I didn't like to read.
Reward system, right?
Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because this is the trick. This is how you hack. This is biohacking. So this is the issue. Dopamine gets released when you're supposed to be enjoying something. How you get addicted to food and carbohydrates is dopamine. Now, my dopamine might have came from, I don't know what I used to like to do, party with friends or see a chick or whatever the hell I used to do, or watch TV, or even pick up girls. So my problem was that. Now, some people, they grew up with a parent who was a biologist. They taught them things when they were young. They said the world is like this, the sun and the moon, and they got interested. They realized from a young age, wow, learning is fun, curiosity, all of that. I didn't get that. So I'm looking at a book, trying to pass the exam. I'm not interested. So what I did was, number one, starve myself of dopamine. Remove all the dopaminergic as much as I could around my life. I quit music for years. I quit listening to music. I quit watching TV for months, and then I started watching TV for like 1 hour at the end of the day, and I could maintain that. I stopped seeing any friends. Like I said, I took the bus to school every day. I was sort of partially by choice, partially not. I could have gotten a crappy car, but I took the bus in Pittsburgh with interesting people every day just to feel like crap, really. Everything was like sort of down-regulated. And then when I was studying, I would take that Adderall. And while I was reading, I got two things. Number one, I enjoyed it. Number two, I got habituated to it. I got habituated to that practice. And then what happened? Now I don't need any amphetamine to read a book. I can read a book all day. I can read 600 pages. I can read from morning to night and stay focused and have no problems. And I'll get into why later. Actually, let's do it now. So this is one of the problems. I've talked about my channel before. People don't really know about this in the drug addiction community. Drugs make the brain plastic. Amphetamines, in fact, by the way, another reason you should use a low dose, since we're talking about it, at one dose of amphetamines, rodents' brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a growth factor in the brain, will increase. At double that dose, it will decrease because of the toxicity of the excitement. So what happens when you take Adderall every day? You're not just habituating yourself, you're reorganizing your brain. And that's why there are so many studies, that show that people with ADHD that take amphetamines for a period of years no longer require them. They're actually healed. Because not only that, but by the way, the DAT, the dopamine transporter, it organizes the dopamine system in the brain. So affecting that may be directly organizing that, just even specifically the dopamine system. Forget about all the other systems that are now plastic while you're studying. They're now, what does plastic mean? New neurons developed, agile. It's changing. Your brain is changing. Can't teach an old dog new tricks? Now you can because you have plasticity.
So you have that that 5 milligram prescription, right? Whereas typically, what is the lowest dosage format for Adderall prescribed? Like, is it even under 10 milligrams? Can you even get a 5 milligram? So,
They do, yeah. They sometimes give women. It's based on like size of body. I've noticed some women get 5 milligram, but most men I know are their first prescription is 15, which is I really believe irresponsible of doctors. That's how you get addicted to it. I went through not addiction, but I went through periods of I didn't know. I used to think I had seasonal depression because I would get sad when the sun went down. I didn't realize it's the 15 milligrams of amphetamine I'm taking in the morning that's wearing off. That's too much. That's way too much. That's a burst where you should never feel euphoric. Euphoria is neurotoxicity, just a little bit lower than that. Always.
what do you think about Adderall instant release versus extended release? Because most people are
Extended
getting
release is
extended.
the demon of life. Extended release ruined. Listen to this, guys. Dopamine agonizes adrenaline receptors also. So if you have extended release while you're in bed at night, your brain is agonizing your adrenaline receptors. There is no possible way your sleep is right.
So it's like, I don't even know if they prescribe instant release in Canada anymore. So
I'll tell you why they don't do why they do extended. There's two reasons. Number one, addiction potential. Extended is you feel it less. But the thing is, I don't believe there's a big addiction potential because you're taking one pill. It's not a habit like snorting or smoking cigarettes. It's different. You don't attach it to an action as much. But number two, bipolar disorder. The danger, first of all, dopamine can be very dangerous. Some people, so schizophrenia, there's a dopamine hypothesis of schizophrenia, there's a dopamine hypothesis of bipolar disorder. Most people who use stimulants famously, like rock stars and stuff, develop bipolar disorder. So the concern would be that the cyclothymia, this up and down could be dangerous. And that's why they're trying to tell you not to take days off and all of that. But it won't work. If you're trying to hack your body like we are, you're not actually a diseased person. You're trying to be supraphysiologic. That's the way to do it.
So what do you do if you're ADHD, but you can't even get access to the thing that you're supposed to be using? Because that seems like the majority of what scenario people are in.
Then you need to get friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what
You
it's.
have friends. You have friends. But everyone else should get friends. We should all become friends. No, but really, look, I mean, I don't know how it is in Canada. I can't imagine that they could ban dextroamphetamine short release in Canada. I mean, they do in Dubai, but you're talking about Dubai. I mean, even in England, they don't have it. God, you might be right. British system, maybe.
It's very difficult to get certain.
Yeah,
like
in
it's
England,
not available here either. You know, on
I've used
prescription, but it's impossible to get without it.
I was once put on 36 milligrams of methylphenidate Concerta, the long release in England. That thing was a horrific nightmare. I didn't because at the time I still didn't know. I was like ADHD medication. I didn't know anything. I went through every mistake you can do. This is like through trial and error. This is the way, like I'm telling the audience, this is the way to do it. Never go above 10 milligrams in your life. There's no need. And if you did, there are ways to undo it. You can like block your dopamine receptors, take time off, desensitize, and it'll work all better. Now, there are more tips that are more interesting that people haven't heard of. So the next one is the sigma-1 receptor. You have to agonize the sigma-1 receptor. You have to. If you're not doing this, you're lazy or you don't know what you're doing. So one way you can do it is you can take a DHEA supplement like Steve does. Steve loves DHEA. One of the reasons...
Not now. I'm drug-free, guys. Besides the growth hormone and the selenium.
You really not take DHEA also?
No, not now. I don't need it. I'm in the middle top of the reference range.
Oh, no. I take it for this reason. So DHEA, DHEA sulfate is an agonist of the sigma-1 receptor in the brain. And this receptor is very not well understood. It's recently discovered. The sigma-1 receptor agonism upregulates dopaminergic activity in the brain. So instead of taking more amphetamine, and getting more sympathetic nervous drive, what do? You go take the sigma-1 receptor agonist also, so you upregulate that dopaminergic effect without taking more amphetamine. So
that's where the adrenal fatigue response or reduction comes from DHEA supplements. You know, that's why I put it on most of my guys' protocol. It's like, you know, you're in the that sympathetic stage all the time. It's time to relax. That's how you recover.
So you have a couple of choices. You could take DHA, that's an easy one. You could take fluvoxamine, the SSRI I take. Why do I take fluvoxamine? It's because it's a sigma-1 agonist. But what can you take also that's very effective? An acetylcholinesterase inhibitor called donepezil. Donepezil is not only the Alzheimer's disease medication that is given for people with memory issues, and not only potentially, it's not given to them to slow down the progression of the disease, but potentially it could slow down the degradation of cholinergic neurons in the hippocampus or in other areas. But it's a potent sigma-1 agonist. So I take 20 milligrams of donepezil every time I take my 5 milligrams of dextroamphetamine together. Enhances.
But a natural alternative that might be decently effective would be
DHA sulfate does it.
What about ginkgo biloba, huperzine A, etc.?
No, you're talking about this. They're amazing, of course, and your product contains them amazingly. That's absolutely right. I'm just talking about the sigma one. I take. I still take those. I still take those in the morning. I still take them also. Yeah, but and ginkgo has way more benefits also than just that, and so does huperzine and MDA blockade. So anyway, continuing on past that, Ghrelin receptor agonism. One of the reasons I gained a lot of weight recently, I didn't mention to anyone, I've been using MK677 for.
Oh shit!
Oh yeah, I didn't tell anyone that.
I didn't even know that.
So the ghrelin receptor also amplifies dopaminergic activity in the brain. Now, growth hormone is not the same way. So I have some notes on this about growth hormone. I don't know if I wrote it down here. No, I didn't write it. But ghrelin, so the the growth hormone secretagogue receptor, which is really the ghrelin receptor, agonism there directly causes upregulation of dopaminergic signaling. But agonizing dopamine receptors downregulates growth hormone. But it's not through the ghrelin receptor. So this is a separate pathway. So I've been experimenting with this for the last 2 months. Sometimes I do experiments. I don't know.
What dose?
25.
Wow, you did the full blown. Were you
all
hungry
the studies are on 25.
How was your blood sugar level in the morning?
I didn't measure it, honestly. It was ridiculous. It was probably, I'm fat.
The studies showed, I think it was like 12.5 was almost as effective GH increase wise, but the IGF increase was substantially lower, if I recall correctly.
Maybe you read a study that I didn't read. All of the studies that I read used 25, and
yeah. So that's the dose they use in the trials, I believe. But when they were doing dose response comparisons, I recall fairly vividly writing an article in like 2017 where they compared 12.5 versus 25, and it was like 80% the GH increase or something, but like a fraction of the IGF-1, which for you sounds like it may be more ideal. Because you want less of the IGF-1, right?
I mean,
it
probably just means less. No, I don't necessarily want less. Well, I guess that's true. Yeah, that's true. You're right. Yeah, I do want less IGF-1. But I should mention
metformin. Did you take metformin with the
MK6? I'm always taking empagliflozin. I'm always taking everything really. I take a lot of things. It increases cyclic adenosine monophosphate. That's what it does exactly, and that's how it increases dopamine. Now, that's not the shocking one. The third one I wanted to mention, probably your audience has never ever heard of. It's a monoamine oxidase B inhibitor. There are two enzymes that break down what are called the monoamines: serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. These are the three hormones most known in the brain.
I used to have hordenine in our product as a MAO inhibitor. This was to like extend the half-life of PEA, but this was like a primitive, one of the first formulas I made. But anyway, just a side note. So they may sort of know what you're talking about, but anyways, continue.
Oh, really? Oh, great. No, I know they know about MAO. Monoamine oxidase inhibitors, most people know about. The interesting thing about this is this. MAO-A breaks down all of the monoamines, right? The reason why I've never even experimented with one of them was just because I knew that systemic effects of inhibiting the breakdown of those catecholamines will affect my heart and other kinds of things because I have higher serotonin levels in my body. But it is not concerning for the audience. It's not like high levels. I'm just freaked out about longevity. So it's not like that. Like Steve, for example, will take 5-HTP, but I won't take it because I don't want higher levels of serotonin in my body. I'm just too scared of it. But because I take so much in my brain.
Yeah, you have an SSRI, so you get, at least like I get a systemic effect and you get a localized effect.
Exactly.
Which at one point I might actually switch to.
That's what I'm trying to do. So that's what I'm talking about, the MAO-B. So the MAO-B is different because it only breaks down dopamine. It's very selective.
Okay.
And there's a new drug. There were also MAO-B inhibitors before, but I never thought to use them either. There's a new drug that is very interesting. This drug has two effects that I really like. Number one, it doesn't really matter that it's a reversible MAO-B inhibitor. But what's really interesting is it reduces glutamatergic activity in the body by lowering the activity at calcium channels. Now, there's a class of anti-epileptic drugs, which I'm really into researching because I don't want to use GABAergic drugs. And I have a lot of consultation clients who have anxiety issues. and they don't want to use SSRIs because of sexual dysfunction. So I'm often looking at anti-epileptic drugs that slow down basically general activity in the brain. What is called in neuroscience is the excitatory to inhibitory ratio. So changing the E to I ratio. So this drug, which I'm about to mention, so I should name it, is safinamide, which is Xadago. Xadago actually lowers the basically general glutamatergic activity in the brain slightly. Why is that great for Adderall or amphetamines or dexedrine? Because dexedrine not only increases dopaminergic activity, which is excitatory and can kill neurons, but it does that to glutamatergic activity also. But we want the habituation. We don't want to slowly damage our brains with amphetamine toxicity over our lifetimes, and we don't want our heart rate to rise. So this lowers that a little bit and enhances the dopaminergic effect tremendously at 50 milligrams. The max dose is 100. Tremendously. So now you're at 5 milligrams of dextroamphetamine. You're not using more than that. And you've got, and now I'm not done. There's some more.
But would you take that at the same time or alternating days? Same
no,
time?
I take it every day. Yeah. So then, I wanted to mention another thing. It also ameliorates the blood-brain barrier. This is a very interesting thing about it. It fixes the blood-brain barrier in older people a little bit. You see, as you get older, your blood-brain barrier weakens, which is one of the ways that your brain gets damaged quicker. It also, by the way, reduces what's called dyskinesia, which happens among Parkinson's disease patients when they're given a lot of dopamine, which may indicate, and it slows the rate of their Parkinson's disease, which is the biggest concern if you're taking dopaminergic drugs. You don't want to end up like Muhammad Ali, our hero, who had Parkinson's disease and he suffered his whole life because when dopaminergic neurons die, that's what happens. But you need to lose like 70% of yours. So it might not happen to you, but you don't want it to happen at all. Well, this drug slows it down on even them. So it may totally inhibit the damage that the amphetamine is doing to you. And, continuing on just very briefly, I just wanted to mention, like, some people think of neuroinflammation when they think of amphetamines. They think like the amphetamine is causing a lot of damage, and then the nervous system, the microglia, are releasing inflammatory cytokines. So there is some evidence. I should probably put this on my blog somewhere, but there's some evidence that it's not that's causing methamphetamine toxicity in the brain. When they do the methamphetamine toxicity studies, it's actually just the excitation. It's not the immune system attacking it. So you don't really have to worry about that. That's why we bring up that other point of just reducing glutamatergic activity in general. Now, that'll slightly lower long-term potentiation, memory formation, but not that much. Another thing I wanted to mention, I take an ARB. Guess what? Blockade of the AT1 receptor nullifies apoptotic effects of methamphetamine in rodents. And this has been studied quite a few times using ARBs on the AT1 receptor. Because there's some vascular issues that come from that excitation. And that's some of the remodeling that happens in the supposed amphetamine toxicity. Finally, I wanted to mention just this last thing, the drug-induced plasticity. I just wanted to mention for people who are drug addicts, like I used to be an alcoholic back in the day, it's very, very difficult to get out of addiction because when you're in addiction, your brain has a lot of neurogenesis. And that means your brain is producing a lot of new neurons. So an old dog is learning a lot of new tricks. And then what do you do to get sober? You go to AA. And AA tells you, don't do anything and come and talk to us. And what happens is your brain goes suddenly totally frigid. And you can't adapt. There are no new neurons building. And what are you stuck on? The drug addict brain. So just for people to know, I just wanted to mention, amphetamines cause plasticity. Generally, when you're in addiction, you can never stop addiction without increasing plasticity if you want to do it easily. That's why we've been experimenting with cerebral lysine, which we could talk about also. And while you're on amphetamines, if you increase neurogenesis even more, you'll protect those cells from cell death if they experience any potential cell death, because neurogenesis, growth factors in the body don't just grow new cells. They also stop old cells from dying. So that's a key fact. So if you're using like an SSRI, like fluvoxamine, that agonizes sigma-1 receptor with your donepezil, like I am, and then you're protecting your cells a little bit, you're not so afraid of the dopamine. That's my piece for now. But there's many other tips I can offer later.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure could be relevant for a decent amount of people on here, hopefully. I don't know how easy it is to get the instant release for the majority of people, but
in the US, it's extremely easy. Very easy.
Is it?
Very, very, very.
I can get it. I can get glucagon like one receptor agonist, but those I can get. But the appetite suppressants and the peptidase peptidyl 4 inhibitors, which we should discuss on another episode, because that inhibits the breakdown of all growth factors.
One thing I did want to discuss before we cap it off is